Ladies and gentlemen, brace yourselves. Because what just dropped in Huntsville might be the final nail in the coffin of Martell Holt's already crumbling empire. You think you've seen reality TV drama? Forget the cameras. Because the real show is happening in the courtroom, and trust me, this episode doesn't have a reunion special. It has probation papers, custody battles, and a plot twist no one saw coming. How far can a man fall before the audience stops clapping? How many chances can you burn through before the judge decides, nope, that's it, roll credits? And here's the million-dollar question. Is Martell Holt just unlucky in love? Or is he the architect of his own downfall? We're talking about the man who once strutted on love and marriage, Huntsville like he was the king of real estate, family values, and charm. Now he's the poster child for court fines, probation deadlines, and public side eyes. And guess what? His latest legal nightmare just got even messier. Reports are surfacing that the court has officially slammed the door on his appeal, leaving him with nothing but bills, restrictions, and a reputation sinking faster than a bad spin-off show. So grab your popcorn, because this story is bigger than a cheating scandal, louder than a social media rant, and spicier than a reunion brawl. The question is, will Martell survive this round, or is Melody Rogers about to score the ultimate reality TV victory both on screen and off? Martell Holt once walked into the spotlight of love and marriage Huntsville as if he were the man who had it all together, presenting himself as the picture of success, family, and ambition. But the illusion of perfection shattered faster than anyone could have imagined, and what followed was a story that blurred the line between television drama and real-life scandal. From the outside looking in, Martell and Melody seemed like a couple who could conquer anything. For beautiful children, real estate deals, business ventures, and the image of a couple destined to become community icons. Yet what the cameras could not hide forever was the reality of betrayal, ego, and an inability to control impulses that would eventually drag Martell from a celebrated family man into the center of legal turmoil. It started with whispers that grew louder until they became undeniable shouts. Rumors of infidelity that Martell at first dismissed with charm and a practiced smile. But as the truth unraveled, it became clear this was not just a one-time lapse of judgment, it was a pattern of reckless choices. A long-term affair that transformed him from the loving husband on TV into a figure of ridicule both in his community and in the Rue and in the eyes of fans who had once admired him. Melody, who had built her brand as strong, smart, and resilient, did not just endure humiliation, but chose to stand her ground, speaking openly on camera about the betrayal, the nights of doubt, and the struggle to reconcile love with dishonesty, and viewers rallied around her, seeing in her the courage to walk away from a toxic situation that no amount of public appearances could repair. Martell, instead of using that moment to show growth or accountability, doubled down, sparring with Melody on and off screen, creating a spectacle that blurred the boundary between scripted drama and genuine, emotional warfare. The affair was only the beginning, because as the marriage disintegrated the custody, battles began, and with them came allegations of harassment, manipulation, and verbal abuse, allegations that would later fuel legal consequences far more damaging than bad press. By May of 2024, the court of public opinion had already turned on Martell. But the actual courtrooms of Huntsville caught up with him when he was convicted of third-degree domestic violence and harassing communications, charges that placed him under probation, handed him a suspended jail sentence, fined him, and most damaging of all, placed him under a no-contact order with Melody. For a man already painted as controlling and unpredictable, the legal confirmation of harassment shattered whatever remained of his reputation. Because unlike reality TV storylines, these rulings were not edited for entertainment. They were binding decisions that followed him everywhere. His choice to appeal the decision only deepened the drama, because rather than overturning the ruling, he ended up pleading guilty again in circuit court in 2025. Essentially cementing his status as guilty in the eyes of the law and giving Melody more ammunition in their ongoing custody war. By that time, public opinion had solidified, and while some argued reality TV exaggerated their fights for ratings, Others saw the court rulings as proof that the cameras had only captured the surface of a much darker reality. Martell's downfall became a case study in how arrogance can fuel destruction. Because each time he had an opportunity to step back and rebuild, he instead leaned further into denial. Public outbursts and reckless decisions. Financial strain added to the chaos with fines, court costs, child support obligations, and legal fees piling up in ways that even his TV paychecks and business ventures could not comfortably cover. Every headline about his legal struggles reminded the audience not of a misunderstood, Amen, but of someone unable to escape his own worst instincts. Melody, meanwhile, gained the reputation of being the reliable parent, the one who put the children first, the one who remained calm and focused on building a stable life despite constant provocations. And court rulings repeatedly sided with her, strengthening her public image as well as her legal standing. As the custody trial of October 2025 loomed, it became clear that Martell was walking into the biggest challenge of his life, not just as a father, but as a man whose name was now linked to domestic violence and harassment. The suspense was not just about what the judge would decide, but whether Martell himself had the capacity to present any evidence that he was a changed and trustworthy parent. Yet, given his record of failed appeals, guilty pleas, and continued controversies, the question hung in the air. Was Martell Holt spiraling toward a final defeat that no amount of charm, bravado, or television airtime could salvage? Or was there still a sliver of redemption waiting if he could somehow convince the world he was more than the sum of his mistakes? The court of public opinion had already sentenced Martell long before. The judges handed down their rulings, but what made his situation even more disastrous was the way every single misstep became public knowledge, feeding a cycle where his personal failings turned into viral talking points, and his attempts to defend himself only deepened the impression of a man trapped by his own ego. Viewers who once tuned in to watch him as part of a power couple now tuned in for a very different reason. To witness the implosion of his image in real time, social media users dissected every clip of him arguing with Melody, every headline about his conviction, every vague post he made on Instagram, and the narrative that emerged was one of a man unable to control either his impulses or his public image. Anonymous sources claimed that Martell spent lavishly to maintain appearances, dropping money on luxury cars and designer outfits even as court fines and legal bills piled up. A contradiction that only fueled speculation about whether his finances were far more unstable than he wanted the world to believe. Some alleged that behind the scenes he had borrowed heavily from business associates and even attempted to use his reality TV fame to cut deals that never materialized, leaving him desperate to maintain the illusion of wealth while drowning in obligations. The scandal grew larger than just a custody battle or a domestic violence conviction, because it came to symbolize something deeper about reality television and the people who star in it. On one side, fans praised Melody for showing resilience, arguing that her story was an example of why women should never tolerate abuse or betrayal and should instead reclaim their dignity no matter how public the struggle becomes. On the other side, Martell still had defenders, though fewer than before. People who suggested that the television cameras and producers had exaggerated his worst traits and edited him into a villain because every show needs one. Yet even those voices grew quieter as each new court document confirmed that this was not simply clever editing, but a man's own choices catching up with him. Reports circulated that his circle of friends had grown smaller, with many of the same cast members who once celebrated with him now keeping their distance, aware that association with Martell brought more trouble than benefit. Asterisk. What made things more sensational was the alleged existence of leaked text messages and private recordings, supposedly showing Martell in heated exchanges not just with Melody, but with other women in his life. Recordings that painted him as manipulative, threatening, and often desperate to control situations slipping out of his hands. Whether or not all of these leaks were authentic did not matter, because once the rumor mill began spinning, the damage was irreversible. Memes spread across Twitter and TikTok mocking his downfall. Clips of him pleading his case on the show were spliced with courtroom footage. And the hashtag Martell meltdown trended more than once, turning his personal pain into digital entertainment for millions. Meanwhile, Melody's reputation only grew stronger, with fans lauding her as the perfect example of how to rise from betrayal and use adversity to build both personal strength and brand recognition. She released new projects focused on her children and spoke candidly about healing, a contrast that made Martell's spiral appear even more chaotic. Yet the stakes were higher than online humiliation because, as the October custody trial approached, the legal consequences of his actions were impossible to ignore. Alabama family courts are known to take domestic violence findings seriously, and while Martell's supporters argued that his conviction was for harassment rather than physical assault, the fact remained that a conviction is still a conviction, and judges are trained to prioritize the safety and well-being of children. Melody's lawyers had a clear strategy: to highlight his guilty pleas, his history of conflicts, and his inability to comply with earlier financial orders, painting a picture of a father unreliable and potentially unsafe to have unrestricted access to his children. Martell's team, meanwhile, was said to be scrambling for evidence of rehabilitation, enrolling him in intervention programs, encouraging him to attend therapy, and advising him to present himself in court as a changed man. Whether that strategy would succeed was doubtful, given his repeated pattern of behavior. But the attempt itself revealed how desperate the situation had become. By the time the court hearings pushed into their final stages, the public fascination with Martell's downfall had become something of a cultural event because it was no longer just gossip among fans of Love and Marriage Huntsville, but a case study in how fame can unravel faster than it is built. Every move he made was magnified. Every stumble became a meme. And every angry outburst or emotional breakdown fueled the perception that he was spiraling with no way out. The courtroom atmosphere itself was described by people close to the case as tense and theatrical, with reporters crammed into the gallery and bloggers refreshing their feeds every second, hoping to catch a glimpse of his expressions. When the judge questioned his credibility, Martell tried to present himself as calm and reformed, but his past actions loomed over him like a shadow he could not escape. The guilty pleas, the harassment conviction, the unpaid obligations, all of it formed a narrative too powerful to ignore. Melody, on the other hand, appeared collected and focused, always positioning her arguments around the well-being of the children and reinforcing her role as the stable parent. A strategy that not only won sympathy in the courtroom, but also cemented her standing with the public, who had already rallied to her side. The whispers about his financial troubles became louder as anonymous insiders alleged that Martell had quietly liquidated assets to cover mounting legal costs, and that some of his real estate ventures were essentially stalled, creating speculation that he might soon face bankruptcy filings if he could not restructure his debts. This added another layer of suspense to an already tangled saga, because if the courts ruled against him in custody and financial responsibilities while his businesses faltered, it could mean the complete dismantling of the brand he once built. Observers compared it to watching a house of cards collapse piece by piece, each ruling or revelation knocking another layer of his carefully curated image to the ground. The irony was hard to miss because Martell had spent years presenting himself as the picture of success and masculine confidence. Yet here he was exposed by his own choices, reduced to pleading for credibility in a courtroom, while his ex-wife seemed to thrive in the very spotlight that once elevated him. Public opinion hardened further when gossip sites published supposed leaked emails in which Martell allegedly begged for financial backing from former associates. Messages laced with desperation that clashed sharply with his public persona of strength and independence. Whether those leaks were real or manufactured by opportunistic sources hardly mattered, because perception had already turned against him, and in the world of reality, television and celebrity branding, perception is everything. The tension only deepened as child. Advocates and legal experts began weighing in on national platforms, discussing the potential precedent the case could set in custody disputes involving public figures. Some speculated that Martell might be forced into supervised visitation or limited parental rights, outcomes that would not only affect his relationship with his children, but also permanently stain his reputation in the eyes of fans and potential business partners. Melody's supporters saw this as poetic justice. A man who had belittled his wife and flaunted his infidelity, now facing the humiliation of losing both his family unit and his financial stability in front of the very audience he once sought to impress. Martell's defenders dwindled to a small echo chamber online, arguing that he was being unfairly targeted because of his fame, and that the justice system was bending under public pressure. But the larger public dismissed these claims, pointing instead to the undeniable record of his actions and choices. The idea of redemption was floated here and there. Whispers that maybe he could write a tell-all book or launch a comeback project to rebuild his image. Yet even those possibilities seemed faint compared to the mountain of damage that surrounded him as the case reached its peak. One journalist remarked that this was less a custody battle and more a cautionary tale about ego, fame, and the consequences of unchecked behavior. That framing resonated widely because it captured the essence of why the public remained glued to every update. It was not simply about one man's legal troubles, but about the broader spectacle of a public figure undone by his own hubris. Martell's silence on social media during the most intense weeks only amplified the speculation. Every post that failed to appear became its own headline, with fans wondering whether he was preparing some grand statement or if he had finally realized that nothing he said could salvage the wreckage. When rulings began to be handed down, they were not catastrophic all at once, but piece by piece. Financial penalties here, visitation limitations there. Enough to slowly chip away at his influence until the man who once strutted into the spotlight seemed diminished, smaller, and weighed down by the very spotlight he once craved. By the end of the summer, the narrative was clear. Martell Holt had gone from reality TV star and self-styled mogul to a cautionary tale studied more for what not to do than for what he accomplished. And the final chapter of his courtroom drama left audiences with a lingering question that still sparks debates. Could he ever come back from this? Or was this the final act in a very public tragedy disguised as entertainment? So here we are, standing at the edge of this dramatic saga, watching Martell Holt's empire crumble piece by piece, while Melody rises from the ashes stronger than ever. And the only real question left is what happens next. Will Martell somehow stage a miraculous comeback, writing a tell-all memoir about betrayal, fame, and downfall? Or is he destined to become another cautionary tale filed away in the reality TV Hall of Shame? And what about Melody? Does this case officially crown her as the Queen of Resilience, turning every heartbreak into a victory march? The answers are not in the headlines yet, but they might just unfold in the weeks to come. And you know you don't want to miss a single twist of this roller coaster. So here's where you come in. I want to hear what you think. Do you believe Martell deserves a second chance, or has he crossed too many lines to ever earn back respect? Should the court throw the book at him, or should redemption be on the table? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you want the truth uncensored. And subscribe right now, because the next chapter in this story is going to be explosive. The story is going to be explosive.